Thank you, everyone. It's a great honor to be talking with such a distinguished group of panelists and audience. We're here to talk a little bit about venture capital. And in Brazil, we have fertile soil, but not only as a commodity power, also with all the ingredients for a thriving VC ecosystem. We can talk about talent, digitization, big problems to solve, technology adoption by the population. But yet, when we look at total private equity spending as a percentage of GDP, it is still very negligible in the region. So I would like to start this panel asking Florian and Lara if they can comment a little bit how they're seeing the risk-reward balance when we put opportunities and how to overcome the hurdles and also to face resistance of investors in the region.
Go ahead, Lara.
Thank you, Florian. First of all, thank you very much for the invitation to be here. I always start talking a little bit about the main components of a healthy VC ecosystem. The way that we see it, Tereza, you mentioned it perfectly. It's talent, capital, and exits. And in the terms that we see it right now, in terms of talent at least, Latin America has never seen such an abundance of talent in the ecosystem, flooding the tech ecosystem. And that's both because, well, I mean, tech talent graduation rates have increased 3 times over the last years. The success cases like Nubank and Stone and even some of the cases that we've seen here today are graduating executives into the entrepreneurial path. And that talent then coupled with capital, which for the first time we see a complete capital cycle, both all the way from seed up to Series B, that's local, of course still complemented by international capital. And I think the fact that this event is being held here is perhaps one of the best examples of economic interest in the region. I think those are 2 of the main components that definitely are big opportunities and that will continue to further the VC ecosystem here. The big hurdle that we still see are definitely exits, successful exits. And I think for that, we'll still need to see more mature capital markets, even local M&As, local capital markets open for IPOs. But at the end of the day, I think the biggest component and the base of the entire ecosystem is the fact that there's an infinity of problems to be solved. And these problems are massive problems, right? We're not talking about the AI application for some niche industry. We're talking about solving financial systems, education systems, healthcare systems, and so on. And so I genuinely believe that it's not a matter of if there will be this next success case like Nubank or Stone were, but much more a matter of when. And these companies probably already exist, and I think we have some great examples of them here with us today.
Perfect. Yeah, I think those are great points, Lara. Maybe to give a little bit of color to some of the things you said, you know, we've been doing venture investing for almost 8 years now as Canary. If you include my time as an angel, almost 10 years. So I've seen my fair share of the evolution of the ecosystem. About 50% of founders that we back today at the early stage are repeat entrepreneurs. So definitely you're seeing some of that talent flywheel at the founder level kind of, you know, kick in. And on the capital side, it's very interesting as well. I agree on the local capital is a new component, was a big risk maybe 7, 8 years ago, but definitely feels de-risked now. And even when you look at total VC activity in 2023, we're about 6 to 7 times up versus when we first started Canary in 2017. And you know, despite the boom year in 2020 and 21, we're up versus, for example, 2019. So definitely seeing that talent and capital flow. On the exits piece, I think I'm a little bit more optimistic. You know, a stat that we'd like to share, you've had 11 exits above $1 billion in Latin America already since 2017. That's, by the way, more than in India or Southeast Asia. To give a little bit of a global perspective, where you've had 7 and 8 exits, respectively. So it certainly feels like the ecosystem is at this maturity point where some things are proven, some things are still yet to be, you know, proven, but certainly a lot healthier than when, you know, things first started a couple years or decades ago. So we're excited and looking forward to solving all these problems.
If in one hand we have capital more expensive now, in the other we have AI as a potent tool to unlock value, to drive efficiencies. And SoftBank is very bullish with the AI opportunity for LATAM. And it's very good to see companies like Unico, Mauricio, that have a very clear AI angle. be it in the core of the product or as a tech enabler. It would be great to hear a little bit from you on Unico's strategy, and how do you think AI can really unlock value for the entire LATAM ecosystem?
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Tereza, and thank you for having me here. AI is the hot topic. Everybody's talking about AI, not only here, but in all the conferences that I attend. But the joke that I like about AI is that AI is like a young person or a teenage talking with the friends if they are dating with a beautiful woman. Everybody says that it's doing. Almost nobody's really doing, but the few people that really are doing, they don't share information. And people use AI for efficiency. There are some proven uses of the AI, like customer service and like helping coding, that everybody is using. It's very natural to use. But in terms of full usage of AI to help the products and to solve problems, is not being fully deployed in what I see. And at Unico, what we are doing is that we are using AI even to detect AI, because we have the identity solution. And AI is a threat for us in terms of frauds of people using AI to use a false identity. And you use AI to detect AI and solve the problems caused by AI. So it's very powerful, and we are using our products to enhance the security of the product.
Yeah, it's amazing to see how we can see AI being actually a moat for a LATAM company. So, but beyond that, we're also seeing as an enabler and as a very important efficiency drive, be it on the CS and other drivers. The thing is that efficient capital allocation is the name of the game now. Entrepreneurs were forced to extend run rate, to streamline their business while maintaining growth, and some of the successful companies, we're actually seeing them reach a break-even even before raising a Series C, Series D, and so forth. And I think, Rubens, it would be great if you can share a little bit how Mottu was able to get to a very fine balance between growth, impact, and at the same time, profitability.
Okay, at Mottu, we are a motorcycle rental company, and that we are born to serve the unserved. So our customers, they need to have the product at the cheapest price they can. And as a capital-intensive business, we need to generate return on capital. So from the beginning, we really were focused on how to generate return on capital, and it took 1 year to get to 1,000 motorcycles rented out. Now we are getting to 100,000 motorcycles rent all over Brazil and in the main cities of Mexico. We are more than 3,000 people in the team. And by the end of the year, probably we are reaching $200 million with the company not only EBITDA positive, but net income profitable. And this gives us the conviction that we are in the right way and that we can really scale the company without raising that much money.
Impressive. The theme of this conference is Invest in Dignity. And I'd like to ask Lara and Florian how they're seeing the investment opportunities in LATAM beyond the fintech and financial inclusion that we know captures more than 50% of the investments in the region. But when we combine those large problems that Lara mentioned with the AI tools that will be and are already available in education, healthcare, climate, green energy, what opportunities are you seeing there to go beyond financial services? And as a spoiler, I know the three of us invest in Alice, which is in the audience, but it would be great to hear more from you on that.
Yeah, I think healthcare is a very big opportunity. I think one of the characteristics of the Brazilian market, at least, it's a very insular and isolated market from abroad, which is both a positive and a negative sometimes. And naturally, you have some companies that develop globally from Brazil, but that's probably not the base case for most of us doing early stage investing. So healthcare naturally is one of those markets that has sufficient size and substance and problems. You know, you mentioned Alice as one of these companies tackling these issues, but we see that pretty consistently throughout the last few years, that entrepreneurs are tackling problems in healthcare, whether that's Genial Care, which is a company tackling the autism issue for the healthcare plans, or even a recent investment of ours in Arvo Saúde, which is tackling a fraud problem for healthcare plans. So healthcare is one of those areas where you see a lot of opportunity. Naturally, I think AI is getting a lot of attention, as mentioned here on the panel. We don't really think of that as a separate category. We think it's a way of building product, developing software, and enabling businesses that weren't able to exist before. Whereas I think in developed markets, it's very much of an efficiency and productivity story and something related to labor shortage. And I think AI comes as a solution at an interesting point in the developed world. I think in Brazil, it's a lot, or LATAM, it's a lot about access and cost to serve, and a little bit what Marcelo was mentioning earlier, giving accessibility to things that were not accessible before. And I think healthcare is one of those. I think you do see it in financial services as well. But in general services, I think through AI is something we're very excited about.
Yeah, the only thing I'd complement to that, I think within the theme of invest in dignity, of course, financial inclusion is something that we've spoken a lot about, and fintech is the best success case for Latin America, from things like Nubank in the private sector to things like Pix in the public sector, which is our instant payment network. But within our portfolio, for example, we invest across the seed stage in Latin America. There are 45 companies, and these are spread across 12 sectors. So everything from health to education to logistics. And I think at the end of the day, what we see is that the nature of problems in Latin America, given the nature of these problems and given the solutions and the scale of the solutions that the entrepreneurs are tackling, most of them at some point will end up having some sort of financial inclusion impact. And I think that's clear in many cases in our portfolio where, for example, Covey, which is a car rental solution for ride-sharing drivers, which obviously provides access to cars to Uber 99 drivers that previously wouldn't have had cases. Even Rubens, we were talking about your case, I think, is an exceptional case of where the base wasn't a fintech, but at the end of the day, the solution, the primary impact of that is financial and financial inclusion for its drivers.
The Brazilian market has a lot of regional nuances, but at the same time, the problems are somewhat universal, and we're actually seeing some category-defining business being created in the region with a lot of room to global expansion. And for example, WellHub is one of them. I know they're talking on a later panel. But we also have two companies here, like both Unico and Mottu, that are already engaging with some international expansion plans and aiming to become global companies and bring those solutions global-wide. It would be great to hear a little bit from you on how is your global strategy and how is the Brazilian product and services and teams being accepted elsewhere?
You go first.
Yeah, I can start here. The problem that Unico is solving in Brazil is a reality in other countries of Latin America, not only Latin America, but countries in Asia and Africa, because we are identifying the identity frauds in onboarding of financial institutions or e-commerces. And the product that we developed in Brazil is proven to be usable in other countries. We're doing a pilot in Mexico right now, and just with 40,000 documents and faces, we found more frauds than we had when we had 1 million documents in Brazil. So the percentage of frauds are higher than in Brazil, and we believe that with our solution, we can address these markets. So we are creating what we call the global ID solution that will be a global identification that can be tested anywhere in the world, starting from Latin America.
In case of Mottu, I think that we are creating the category of providing the motorcycle as a service in a way that people will have the asset with the lower cost of ownership as possible. And this disrupt as is the traditional market, whereas like the OEM sell to distributor that make a margin, the retailer make a margin, and people also make money on spare parts business. By controlling everything inside our ecosystem, I think that we can provide our service in most of the countries where interest rates are expensive for low-income people, where there is a monopolistic market. But even so, we are in the two major countries of LATAM, and I think that there is a lot to do. We are also testing like microcredit and other business units that can be enhanced by our flywheel. So I think that the potential of the business is very large, and we are building a sizable business.
We mentioned a little bit earlier about exits and having clear liquidity paths is usually the biggest hurdle that we see in this space. But beyond Nubank, Mercado Livre, Vitex, we're seeing some successful US IPOs, local IPOs, but also some relevant strategic deals. I can highlight, for example, the Pismo Visa $1 billion cash deal that was announced last year. How are you seeing exit paths, and how do you see the startup environment actually being a potential target for the traditional incumbents that might be too late in adopting AI and using all those emerging technologies? So overall, what are your views on exits, and any predictions as the IPO window starts to open? We are very excited about some prospect future listings, so it would be great to hear from you on that as well.
I mean, in our case, the way that we see it for our portfolio, and Florian, I'm super curious to hear about you, but I think historically, the goal for many local entrepreneurs has been to IPO in the US, but the reality is that, of course, those are the kind of that's the target, and that's what we all hope to be investing in, but the ecosystem will never be completely mature if there isn't a local scenario also for these kinds of exits. So local capital markets, local IPOs, and then of course local M&As. In terms of M&As, what we see as the most interesting path to exits is eventually US companies that want to be very active here locally, but want to come in and want to set up their operation, but realize that they can't do so just because the market is so big and so fragmented and so different in its own way that it's easier to acquire a local player. And I think maybe Visa and Pismo example is a great case for that.
I would say part of the reason why people are more fintech focused is because you've probably also seen the most strategic activity within fintech. I used to joke that a couple of years ago that we wouldn't see venture capital really taking off in the region until incumbents started paying for either technology or innovation, rather than just doing pure profit focused kind of deals. And so far, you haven't seen much of that. So I agree with Lara's perspective that it's mostly about foreign companies coming in. But I'm rather bearish on the strategic exit side, except for fintech. Although I do think that changes over time. I think the whole Nubank versus the incumbent story was a really tough story for the incumbents, and we'll see how in other market cycles they might react and in other verticals. And I agree that we need a local IPO market to develop at some point for the ecosystem to really be able to flourish, because the reality is that listing in the US is becoming a harder and harder kind of goal. And while we are in the power law business, right, so we actually look for those types of outcomes, I think betting the farm, so to say, on that is a tricky proposition at the moment. So it's an interesting period on that side, I think, for the region, and we'll see how it develops.
Yes. Well, as we wrap up, I'd like to get some insights from you on what would you advise future investors in the region, if you have any final comments on what to look for if you're interested in coming to LATAM.
Other than motorcycles and identity solutions.
If I may start, I think that the problems in LATAM probably are very different than other places in the world. So I think that people really need to look into the details of the opportunities. I think that people that are creating categories like us and even giving credit or with very low income people, etc. People need to really get time to deep dive and understand how we are solving the problems that there exist here.
I think that the same as Rubens, that the problems that exist in Brazil and were solved by companies like the companies that are here can be replicable in other countries of Latin America. It can be a platform to go to other parts of the world. So that's how I see.
Yeah, I think the only thing I'd compliment, maybe also writing off of Rubens' answer, is since the local dynamics are so specific and so unique, it often makes sense to have local partners and be investing with the local players so that you have some sort of access to, more privileged access to information than otherwise.
And I will add to that, I think the most common mistake I see with foreign capital is coming in very strong and then leaving altogether. I think Brazil, Latin America, it's a volatile region. I think one of the ways to smooth out the volatility is to have some sort of a consistency across time, and that's something I generally advise people who are interested in the region to do.
Yes, no, I totally agree. I think this is a long-term game. It's patient capital and consistency. Thinking not on the very, very short volatility is going to make us all thrive. We continue to be super excited about the region. Well, thank you so much for your time and for being here. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.